The boardroom went silent the moment he pointed at her. Not at the vice president. Not at the head of legal. Not at any of the 12 executives seated around that $40,000 mahogany table. He pointed at the woman in the gray uniform pushing a mop bucket through the glass doors. She froze. The mop handle trembled in her hands. Every eye in the room turned toward her, and for a moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the building's air conditioning and the distant heartbeat of a woman who had spent 3 years trying to disappear. Her name was Ngozi Adiz Okafor, and she had not come to Seoul to be seen. She had come to survive. 3 years earlier, Ngozi had been someone. Back in Lagos, she had a corner office, a business degree from the University of Lagos, and a fiancé who told her every morning that she was the smartest woman he had ever met. She had a mother who braided her hair on Sundays and a little boy named Tabena who laughed so hard at cartoons that he'd fall off the couch and laugh harder at that. She had a life. Then the fiancé took the business account she'd spent 4 years building, forged her signature on a property transfer, and disappeared to Abuja with her savings and her business partner's wife. The morning Ngozi found out, she was sitting in her kitchen feeding Tabena scrambled eggs. The bank notification appeared on her phone like a cold slap.
Oh my God,
She checked
no!
it 3 times.
This can't
4
be happening.
times. She called the
We're
bank.
ruined.
She called her business partner. She called her fiancé. His number was already disconnected. She sat in that kitchen for 2 hours while Tabena asked her why she wasn't eating. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She just stared at the wall and felt something inside her go very, very quiet, the way a place goes quiet after something has been destroyed. By the following year, she had sold the furniture, moved her mother in with her sister, and taken the only job offer that made sense, a cleaning contract in Seoul, South Korea, through a labor agency that promised good pay and safe housing. She didn't love the idea. But Tabena needed school fees, her mother needed medication, and love and pride didn't pay bills. So she packed one suitcase, held Tabena's small face in her hands, kissed his forehead, and told him she would send for him as soon as she could. He was 7 years old. He didn't fully understand. He just said, "Come back fast, Mommy." She promised she would. Cleaning the 42nd floor of the KJH Group headquarters was not glamorous work. The building was the kind of beautiful that reminded you exactly where you stood in the world. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Views of the Han River. Marble that reflected your face back at you like it was judging you. The kind of place where even the air felt expensive. Ngozi came in at 6 in the morning and left at 3 in the afternoon. She was quiet, efficient, and invisible, which was exactly what she preferred. Her Korean was improving. She had learnt enough to greet the other cleaners, navigate the canteen, and apologize whenever a suited executive walked past without seeing her. They never saw her. Which is why, on the morning of October the 14th, when she pushed her cart through the glass doors of the 42nd floor boardroom mistakenly, because she thought the meeting started at 9, not 8, she felt her stomach drop to the floor. 12 executives. 3 lawyers. 1 interpreter. And him. Kang Ji-hoon sat at the head of the table like a man who had never once in his life been uncertain about anything. He was 41 years old, the youngest CEO in the history of KJH Group, and the kind of man that rooms reorganized themselves around. Dark suit. No tie. Eyes that didn't miss anything. He was mid-sentence when she walked in. She turned immediately, reaching for the door handle, her head down, her face burning. Wait. His voice was quiet. Not loud. Not sharp. Just present. The kind of voice that expected to be obeyed not because it was frightening but because it simply was. She stopped. "Come here." She turned slowly. The executives were staring. One of them, a heavy man with silver hair and small eyes, looked at her the way people look at something they want to remove from a room. Ngozi walked forward 3 steps and stopped, hands clasped in front of her. Ji-hoon studied her for a moment. Not cruelly. Just carefully. Like he was reading something. "What's your name?" he asked. His English was clean, precise. "Ngozi," she said. "Sir. I'm sorry, I thought the room was." "How long have you worked here?" She blinked. 3 years. He looked at her a moment longer, then turned back to the table. "The Abara contract," he said to the room. Someone in this room has been moving funds through the Lagos subsidiary account. For the past 18 months. He paused. I've asked the legal team twice. Finance twice. Nobody could find it. He picked up a single sheet of paper and slid it toward the center of the table. She found it. Silence. The silver-haired man's jaw tightened. Ngozi stared. I'm sorry. 3 weeks ago, Ji-hoon said, still not looking at her, you submitted a facilities maintenance report. Routine document. But attached to the back was a printout, a financial routing discrepancy you noticed when you were cleaning the printer tray on the 38th floor. You thought it was left behind by accident. He finally looked at her. It wasn't. The room was so quiet she could hear her own breathing. I've spent 2 weeks verifying what you found, he continued. Someone in this company has been embezzling from our Lagos subsidiary. 400 million won. 18 months. He finally looked at the silver-haired man. Sit down, Director Yoon. Director Yoon hadn't stood up. But he looked like he'd been punched.
That night, Ngozi sat in her small apartment in Mapogu and stared at her ceiling for a long time. She had not meant to expose anything. She had just seen numbers that didn't make sense and thought, out of an old habit, out of 3 years of a brain that still thought like a businesswoman even when her hands were holding a mop, she had thought, that doesn't add up. And she printed it, written a small note, and attached it to the maintenance report because she didn't know what else to do with it. She hadn't expected anyone to notice. She hadn't expected him. Her phone buzzed. Unknown Korean number. She answered carefully. Hello. This is Kang Ji-hoon. She sat up so fast she nearly knocked her water bottle off the nightstand. Sir, are you available tomorrow morning? 8 o'clock. She almost laughed. I work tomorrow morning. I'm on the 39th floor at 6. Not anymore, he said. My assistant will send you details. He hung up. Ngozi looked at her phone for a long time. Then she called her mother in Lagos, because when your life suddenly shifts direction, the first thing you want is a voice that has known you since before you knew yourself. Her mother answered on the third ring, already half awake. Ngozi? What happened? Is it Tabena? No, Mama. Tabena is fine. She exhaled. Something strange happened today. Strange good or strange bad? She thought about Ji-hoon's eyes across that boardroom table. The steadiness in them. The way he'd said her name. Not like it was difficult to pronounce, but like he'd practiced it. I don't know yet, she said honestly. The meeting the next morning was in a smaller room. Just the two of them, plus Ji-hoon's executive assistant. A precise young woman named Minji who took notes with the speed of someone transcribing a legal deposition. Ji-hoon slid a folder across the table to Ngozi. Your background. She opened it slowly. Inside was a clean summary of her. Her business degree. Her former company in Lagos. The fraud case she tried to pursue through the courts and eventually dropped when she ran out of money to fund it. Her work record in Seoul. Her contract status. She closed the folder and looked at him. You investigated me, she said. I always investigate people I'm going to trust, he said simply. Something about the word trust in that sentence, said that plainly without ceremony, made her throat tighten. I'm not asking you to trust me, she said carefully. I know. He leaned back slightly. I'm telling you that I'm going to. There's a difference. He offered her a position as an external compliance consultant. Temporary, contract-based, focused specifically on the Lagos subsidiary audit. He had already cleared it with legal. Her background was more than sufficient. Her instincts had already proven sharper than his entire finance department. She should have said yes immediately. Instead, she said, why? He looked at her for a moment without speaking. Then, because the people who should have found that discrepancy had every reason to find it. You had no reason to find it, no incentive to report it, and nothing to gain from the trouble it would cause you. That's not skill. That's character. A pause. Character is rarer. She took the contract. If this story is already pulling at something in you, stay with me, because this is the part where everything gets complicated. Working alongside Kang Ji-hoon was not what Ngozi expected. She had expected coldness, corporate precision, The efficient politeness of a man who saw people as resources. What she got instead was something quieter and harder to name. He didn't waste words. But the words he chose were always exact. When he disagreed with something she said, he didn't dismiss her. He asked her to explain her reasoning, listen with complete attention, and then either changed his position or told her specifically why he didn't. There was no ego in it. Just rigor. The first time she pushed back on one of his conclusions about the Lagos routing structure, she braced herself. He looked at the data she showed him, looked at it for a long time, then said, "You're right. I missed that." Just like that. No qualification. No retreat into authority. She didn't know why that undid something small and tight in her chest. Within 3 weeks, they had identified 4 more irregularities in the subsidiary accounts. Director Yoon, it turned out, had been quietly building a parallel operation, skimming funds, moving them through a ghost company in Abuja, and using the Lagos operation as cover. The investigation expanded. Legal got involved. The board convened. Through all of it, Ji-hoon kept her at the center of the process. Her name was in every report. Her analysis was cited. Her position was credited. One afternoon, she found him at the window of the conference room after everyone else had left, staring out at the city. Seoul at dusk looked like it had been poured from glass. "You didn't have to keep my name on those reports," she said, gathering her materials. He turned slightly. "Why would I remove it?" "It's not common," she said carefully, "to give credit like that." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Where I grew up, my father built a company by removing other people's names from things they built. He thought ownership was about erasing the source." Something shifted in his expression. "Not much, just enough. I decided early that I would build differently." She looked at him for a moment. "What happened to the company?" "It's mine now," he said. "And the people who built it with him have their names on the wall of the lobby." She didn't say anything. She just picked up her bag and walked to the door. "Ngozi." She turned. "Are you free on Saturday?" he asked. She raised an eyebrow. "For work." The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but close. "No." Saturday was the Bukchon Hanok village. His idea. She dressed in the warmest coat she had, which was not warm enough for a November morning in Seoul, and he appeared at the meeting point in a dark coat that probably cost more than her monthly salary, carrying 2 coffees. He handed her one without asking how she took it. It was exactly right. She didn't ask how he knew. They walked without agenda. He told her about the village, the way the old houses were structured, the logic of the courtyard layouts, the significance of the roof lines. He talked about it the way people talk about things they genuinely love, with a quiet precision that was different from showing off. She told him about Lagos, about the chaos and the beauty of it, the way noise there felt like life, the way the market smelled in the early morning, the way her mother still cooked jollof rice every Sunday like it was a sacred ritual. "Tell me about your son," he said. She stopped walking. "How do you know about Tabena?" "Your file," he said simply. "You send 40% of your income home every month." The allocation note said, "Son's school fees, mother's medication savings." She stared at him. "You read my salary allocation notes?" "I read everything about the people who work for me." He looked at her steadily. "I read his name in the emergency contact form. Tabena. It means, the father is good, in Igbo." Her breath caught. "You looked that up?" "Yes." She didn't know what to do with that. She looked away at the old rooftops against the gray sky, and felt something move in her, deep and warm and slightly frightening. "He's 8 now," she said finally. "He's with my mother. He video calls me every Friday and tells me what he learned in school, and what his best friend did wrong that week." She laughed softly. "He's so full of life. He's everything." Ji-hoon was watching her. "You miss him?" "Every single day." Her voice didn't break, but it came close. "I keep telling myself just one more year. Get stable enough, save enough, find a visa pathway. Just one more year." She exhaled. "I've been saying that for 2 years." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, carefully, "What does stable look like to you?" She looked at him. "Enough to bring him here. Rent a better apartment. Put him in a school." Not wonder every month if I've sent enough. He nodded slowly, said nothing more. Just turned back to the path and kept walking. She would think about that conversation for a long time afterward. Not because of what he said, but because of the way he listened. Like her answer actually mattered to what he did next. Director Yoon was not going quietly. That was the thing about men who had been powerful for a long time. They didn't understand even at the end that the power was already gone. They kept moving pieces on a board that had already been cleared. 2 days after his formal suspension pending investigation, a KJH Group internal memo was leaked to a financial news outlet. The memo suggested that the Lagos subsidiary discrepancies were actually the result of external interference. A foreign contractor who had tampered with records in order to destabilize the company from within. The foreign contractor was described as a Nigerian national currently employed in a temporary compliance role. It didn't use Ngozi's name. Didn't need to. Everyone on the 42nd floor knew exactly who it meant. She found out about the leak on a Tuesday morning, when Minji called her before she'd even finished her breakfast. Her voice was careful and professional, which meant the news was not good. Ngozi read the leaked memo on her phone, standing in her kitchen in her pajamas, and felt that old cold quiet settle over her again. The same quiet that had come the morning she saw the bank notification in Lagos. The same quiet that meant something she had built was about to be taken from her. She got dressed. She went to the office. Ji-hoon was already in the conference room when she arrived, and the moment she saw his face, she knew he'd been there for hours. There were 2 other people with him, legal counsel and the head of corporate communications. When she walked in, he looked at her with an expression that was hard to read. Not cold, not soft, just controlled in the way of someone who is very angry and has decided where to put it. "Sit down," he said to her, and then turned to legal. "How long to trace the leak?" 24 hours, maybe less. "The metadata on the document." "Do it in 12. She sat down. "Ji-hoon." She used his name deliberately, without the sir. His eyes came to her. "This is going to be used to undermine the audit findings. Whatever Yoon's team is building, they'll say I planted the discrepancies, not found them. I know. The findings need to be corroborated by a source that has no connection to me. I know." He reached across the table and turned a folder to face her. "That's already done. 2 days ago, I instructed an external forensic accounting firm to independently verify your analysis. Their report arrived this morning." He tapped the folder. "Their conclusions are identical to yours, down to the decimal point." She looked at the folder, then at him. "You did that 2 days ago." "I did it the day after your analysis was complete," he said, "because I knew Director Yoon would come for you when he had no other moves left. And I wanted to make sure that when he did, there was nothing for him to grab." Something in her chest cracked open quietly. "You protected the work," she said. "I protected you," he said. Just that. No flourish. The room was very quiet. The legal counsel looked at his notepad like he was suddenly very interested in what he'd written there. The case against Director Yoon became formal 3 weeks later. The forensic report, combined with the original discrepancy analysis and 2 additional irregularities uncovered during the expanded audit, was more than enough. Yoon's lawyers attempted 4 different angles of defense, and each one collapsed. On the last day of the formal board review, Ngozi sat in a glass-walled meeting room on the 41st floor and watched Ji-hoon give his closing statement to the board with the same stillness she'd seen in him from the beginning. No drama. No performance. Just facts arranged in an order that made the truth impossible to ignore. She thought about her fiancé in Lagos, who had taken the thing she built and disappeared with it. She thought about the way the world sometimes moved things away from you with no warning, and how you spent years rebuilding the ability to trust that what you held wouldn't simply vanish. She thought about what it meant that she was sitting here. After the board adjourned, Ji-hoon found her in the hallway. He looked tired, not physically, but in the way of someone who had been holding something at distance for a long time. "It's done," he said. "How are you feeling?" She asked because it was the honest question. He considered it. "Like I need to eat something," he said, "and talk to someone who doesn't work for me." She almost smiled. "I technically still work for you. Your contract ends in 6 days." She looked at him. There was something in his voice that was different, the particular note of a person who is saying one thing and meaning something else entirely. Is that why you mentioned it? He looked at her for a long moment. There's an opening in the company's Africa expansion division, he said. Lagos-based development, compliance and risk analysis. It would require you to return to Nigeria. Her heart moved. Lagos. Her mother. Tabena's face. Or, he said more quietly, there's a new regional office opening here in Seoul. Also needs a compliance lead. Different trajectory. She understood what he was not saying. She looked at him carefully. Ji-hoon, what are you actually asking me? He exhaled. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked slightly uncertain. It was a small thing, a slight tension around his eyes, a pause that lasted one beat longer than his usual pauses. I'm asking, he said slowly, what you want. Not what you can get. Not what's practical. What you actually want. She was quiet for a long moment. What she wanted was her son. Her mother's voice in the mornings. Lagos in the rainy season. The specific weight of familiar things. But she was also standing in a hallway in Seoul looking at a man who had read her emergency contact form and looked up what her son's name meant, who had quietly built her a fortress of verified evidence 2 days before she needed it, who listened to her like her words were data he intended to keep. She had not expected to want something she wasn't looking for. I want to bring my son here, she said finally. That's the first thing. Before anything else, that's the first thing. He nodded. Just once, clean and certain. Then we start there, he said. Tabena arrived in Seoul on a Friday evening in early January, wearing a coat that was too thin for the weather because Ngozi hadn't quite calibrated for Korean winter when she ordered it. He walked out of the arrivals gate holding the hand of Ngozi's younger cousin who had flown with him from Lagos, and when he saw his mother, he stopped walking completely for a moment, like he needed a second to confirm she was real. Then he ran. She caught him and held him and stood in the middle of Seoul Incheon Airport with her eyes closed and her face in her son's hair and 8 months of unsent grief coming out quietly through her hands and her shoulders and her shaking exhale. You came back fast, Mommy, he said into her neck. I told you I would, she said. Ji-hoon was standing a few feet back. He had come to the airport with her without being asked, and he was standing now with his hands in his coat pockets in the particular way of a man who understands that this moment belongs to someone else and is glad to be near it anyway. Tabena pulled back from his mother and looked at the tall Korean man standing behind her with the calm eyes. Is that your boss? He asked in Igbo. Ngozi laughed despite herself. Tabena. Ji-hoon looked at the boy steadily. Then in slightly careful English. My name is Ji-hoon. Tabena assessed him with the complete honesty of an 8-year-old. You're very tall, he said. You're very direct, Ji-hoon said. Tabena considered this. My teacher says that too. He seemed to decide something. I'm hungry. Ji-hoon looked at Ngozi. I know a good place, he said. If that's all right. She looked at him. This man who showed up, who prepared before the storm, who said her son's name like he'd been thinking about it, who asked what she wanted instead of what was available. This careful, controlled, quietly extraordinary man who had somehow seen her in a gray uniform pushing a mop bucket and decided she was worth pointing at. Yes, she said. That's all right. It was not a simple thing what grew between them. It grew the way things grow in difficult soil, slowly without announcement, with roots that went deeper than the surface showed. He learned the way she took her coffee. She learned that he went silent when he was processing something painful, and that silence was not absence. She learned his laugh, rare and genuine and slightly surprised, like joy still caught him off guard sometimes. He learned that she was not fragile, that she did not need to be rescued, only witnessed, that the strength she carried was not armor but architecture. It was how she was built, not what she'd put on to survive. Tabena decided that Ji-hoon was acceptable approximately 3 weeks after arriving in Seoul. When Ji-hoon showed up at their apartment with a children's astronomy book, he'd found at a bookshop because Tabena had mentioned once, in passing, that he liked stars. He handed it over without ceremony, the way he did everything. Tabena looked at the book and then up at Ji-hoon. Did you buy this for me? Yes. Why? Ji-hoon looked at him. Because you like stars. Tabena thought about this for a long moment. Then he went and sat on the sofa and opened the book. "You can sit down," he said without looking up, in the tone of someone granting significant permission. Ngozi, watching from the kitchen doorway, pressed her lips together to hold in something that was partly laughter and partly something much warmer. Ji-hoon sat down. There is a moment in every love story that is not a kiss or a confession or a dramatic gesture. It is smaller than that. It is the moment when you realize the person beside you has been quietly building a version of the world that has space in it for everything you are. The grief and the scars and the laughter and the child and the past that didn't break you but changed you. The moment when you realize that the life you are living has, without your full permission, become one you did not dare to want. Ngozi had that moment on a Sunday evening in April. Ji-hoon and Tabena were at the kitchen table working on a school science project that had expanded, somehow, into a 45-minute conversation about the formation of stars. Tabena was explaining something with great authority that was about 40% accurate, and Ji-hoon was listening with the same focused attention he gave to board reports. Ngozi stood in the doorway and watched them and felt something settle in her. Deep and warm and completely terrifyingly true. She had come to Seoul to survive. She had not expected to arrive. She walked into the kitchen, sat down across from them, and reached across the table and put her hand over Ji-hoon's hand. He looked up at her. She said nothing. She didn't need to. His hand turned under hers and held it. "Mommy," Tabena said, not looking up from the project. "Ji-hoon says that stars take millions of years to form but they burn for billions." "That's a long time," she said. "He says things that last the longest take the longest to start." Tabena finally looked up. "Is that true for everything?" Ngozi looked at Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon looked at her. "Yes," she said. "I think that's true for the best things." There was one more thing. On the morning that Ngozi received the formal offer letter for the Seoul Compliance Director position, permanent contract, full benefits, her name on the door, she stood at her apartment window with the letter in her hands and called her mother in Lagos. Her mother answered on the second ring, fully awake this time. "Ngozi, talk to me." She told her mother everything. The job, the apartment, Tabena's school, the man with the quiet eyes who had pointed at her in a boardroom and changed everything. Her mother was silent for a long time. Then she said, in Igbo, the thing mothers say when they have been worrying about you for years and can finally stop. God did not waste your suffering. He was building something with it. Ngozi stood at that window and looked out at Seoul, the river, the city, the cold bright winter light, and let herself cry. Not from pain. Not from the old grief or the old loss or the old quiet that had lived in her chest for so long. She cried because she had kept her promise. She had come back fast. And she had brought something with her. Not the life she'd lost, but a different one. Harder one. More deliberate. Built in difficult soil by someone who had refused, even when everything said otherwise, to disappear. 6 months later, on a Saturday in June, Tabena sat on Ji-hoon's shoulders at an outdoor festival in Uedo and pointed at everything he wanted to see, and Ji-hoon walked steadily beneath him without complaint, and Ngozi walked beside them with her hand in Ji-hoon's free hand, and the city was full of light and noise and the particular joy of ordinary days. There was no grand declaration, no perfect speech. There didn't need to be. Just this. A woman who had survived, and a man who had seen her, and a little boy pointing at the world like it was all for him. Kind of was. Asterisk, if you've stayed this far, you know why. Some stories find you exactly when you need them. Share this with someone who forgot what they're worth. They'll understand.